welcome to the very first episode of our new daily Never Mind the Ballots. This is the election countdown. Each morning we'll be giving you the state of the race, who's up and who's down. 37 days to go. Joining us, Kate Ferguson from The Sun on Sunday. Morning.
Good morning, Harry.
Ryan Sabey, our Deputy Political Editor.
Election greetings.
Oh, there we go. Excellent. And from Savanta, our pollster. Welcome back to Never Mind the Ballots, Chris Hopkins.
Hi,
from
Harry.
Savanta. So, the gloves are off. We've got our first clash of the day. Rishi Sunak is planning to reward Britain's pensioners for their loyalty by stabbing them in the back, just like he did Boris Johnson. It didn't take long for Boris Johnson to make an appearance on the campaign, but no one really thought he'd come from Labour's side. Ryan Sabey, the man that wrote this morning's Sun Splash that's kicked all of this off, Labour's Tory pension policy. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so they're very keen, obviously, the Conservatives, to grab hold of that grey vote. Some fear that it could be slipping away. So one thing they've done is to try and create a new tax-free allowance for OAPs. Now, one thing they'll make sure is it's called the Triple Lock Plus. And as the state pension goes up, so will the tax-free allowance. So pensioners will never be taxed on their state pension.
Isn't it slightly ridiculous that the government who have managed to force pensioners into paying income tax on, thanks to freezing all the thresholds, are actually now the ones now finding money to pay off pensioners because, what, they're annoyed that the people, their core vote are not going to turn out?
Incredibly, they found £2.4 billion.
Down the back of the sofa.
Down the back of the sofa to find it. There's £6 billion available through tax avoidance and tax evasion plans over the next few years, and £2.4 billion of that will be spent on pensioners.
And Kate, this morning, Labour is saying they are not going to back this.
Exactly. It looks like Labour won't back this. They don't really need to. I love the quote you used at the top, which is a Jonathan Ashworth
the attack dog, yeah.
Basically, Jonathan Attackworth.
I think that's what we're calling now. Yeah, that is now his name for everyone.
Jonathan Ashworth is Labour's attack dog, and the gloves are coming off. His quotes are getting more and more vicious.
But doesn't that say something in the fact that Labour obviously are desperately not trying to put out policy? They obviously know that a triple lock plus offering to pensioners is going to go down well. You don't have to, look at our postbags. The second pensioners are mentioned in the paper, they write in. They're people that vote. Given that Ashworth this morning's gone so studs in, stabbing Boris Johnson in the back, that sounds like the sort of thing, Boris Johnson's most loyal fans would be saying rather than the Labour Party. Does that not show a little bit of worry on their side?
Yeah, I mean, look, Labour, the only group Labour aren't polling ahead with is pensioners. They're the only groups that the Tories still have. I'm sure that Chris will talk more about that. Jonathan Ashworth personally has been going after, they're calling it the silver wall, which is this pensioner vote. You're right, they're not matching this pledge. So at the moment, the Tories are offering pensioners more cash for their votes. But Labour so far, their campaign has been very presentational. Lots of talk of change, of a new era. That's what they're doing. They're trying to present themselves as this great hope. And Johnny very happy to go after that pensioner vote presentationally, not yet writing quite the same cheques the Tories are.
Right, in the last 96 hours, we've seen, you've seen the Tory pledge on national service, obviously something designed, again, to go for a slightly more traditional older voter, possibly someone thinking about reform. Now we've seen the pensions vote. Are we seeing a core vote strategy here of shoring up the flanks, or is this an election-winning strategy? Surely you need to be getting families and younger people to vote for you.
I think it's a damage limitation exercise. I think if you look at what the Conservatives, the launch of it, the first few days, it didn't look good with Rishi Sunak out and down the street getting absolutely drenched, then saying the Rwanda plan wouldn't get off. They wouldn't actually have a plane off until after the election. So I think they've gone back to basics almost, to actually try and get out the blocks early with some early policies and try and seize the initiative.
But we are, to be fair, I mean, yes, Kate mentions the sort of Starmer going for the sort of vibes feel. It's all about presentation. It's, shirt sleeves rolled up, big change sign. But there is no policy. It's incredibly policy light. When do you expect Labour to start actually coming up with some policy vote, or are they not?
I don't think they need to. I think their manifesto will be policy light. It'll be very, very thin. They just don't need to. What they need to do, they've got they're nearly there. They're nearly going to seize power. So all they need to do is actually get over the finishing line.
Kate, do you think that'll work? Or it's a bit cynical, isn't it?
It's very cynical.
You were shaking your head.
I was shaking my head. I don't agree with that, Kit. I remember a front bencher telling me a few months ago now that they were saying what the Labour manifesto would be on a curry scale, and they said it's going to be a korma, not a vindaloo.
And everyone knows that korma is not a curry.
Exactly.
So beer korma is back.
So you can really expect to rise light on detail. The danger, right, is that Labour try and do this Ming Vase approach. Don't say anything, just give off good vibes. Is it the 90s again? But could they fall over?
Would it backfire though? Could it backfire?
Look, it will backfire if the Tories start climbing in the polls.
Yes.
If the Tories don't, they'll feel very comfortable doing this.
What the perfect time.
Oh my God.
Was that planned? That was Clash of the Day. We've now got ups and downs of the day. Well, 37 days to go and the nation's head-to-head. Chris, have the polls moved in any way?
No, nothing. I mean, they haven't moved for like 18 months.
Thanks. Yeah, that's all we need.
They haven't moved for 18 months, and I think that there's this assumption that they're now going to start moving as soon as the election campaign was called. But I think what we've seen so far, in the race is that Rishi Sunak isn't a great campaigner, frankly, and I think that there is still this assumption that if the polls move, they will move in one direction, i.e. they will narrow. I don't think that's a given at this point. I think that, as Ryan said, Labour have to have an incredibly safe campaign. I think it doesn't benefit them to go all guns blazing on policy. I think safe is kind of the word of the day, I think, for the Labour Party, and therefore, yes, sure, the Conservative Party have to come out with something, but it does feel like a real core vote strategy at the minute. Let's
just have a look at the state of the race. Your Savanta latest numbers, again, incredibly sticky Labour lead there. Look how flat that line is, as you say, for the last last year, really, there hasn't been any, and that gaping hole between Labour and the Tories, reform going up a bit, but are we seeing reform? Have they peaked? Have they gone up? They seem to be going backwards a bit now.
Yeah, I mean, we seem to think that they possibly have. I think, they still present us pollsters with a bit of a headache, frankly. We don't really know what to do with them because I'm still not convinced that they're going to stand in every constituency. Yeah. If they do, then they are going to take votes away from the Conservative Party. They are a problem for the Conservative Party, and I think that there was some leaked CCHQ polling that implied that that puts about 100 Tory seats at risk. That feels quite toppy for me, but it is ultimately going to be way more of a problem for the Tories than anyone else, and Labour and the Liberal Democrats really do stand to benefit.
So Starmer's got that 20-point poll, and it doesn't seem to be moving yet. I don't know what you've been looking at the numbers yet, but I know you haven't got any published polls out on it, but do you have any inkling about how anything's gone so far in terms of national service, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, nothing in particular. I think that we can kind of assume, based on similar sort of policies, that this is a pitch to reform. And yes, it may help them claw a few votes back. I think that the fact that Nigel Farage isn't maybe going to be front and centre in this campaign isn't going to run, I think, is a huge boost for the Conservative Party, and that still may mean that the reform figures that, at least we maybe not what we're seeing now, but what we have seen are probably not going to happen. This Reform Party doesn't look like UKIP in 2015, as far as I'm concerned, but still, they are polling pretty well, and they are taking votes from the Conservative Party, and I think that does ultimately present a danger. So these policies, whether it's national service or the pension one that we've just discussed, I think they are designed to get that core vote out, and the fact that the Conservatives have to do this doesn't imply that they're really looking to win this general election. It looks like it is, as Ryan says, just damage limitation at this point.
Well, this is what when Rishi Sunak, just a couple of weeks ago, was saying that a hung parliament is, he thinks that the most likely outcome of the general election could be a hung parliament. Obviously, that's slightly tacitly admitting defeat, because in a hung parliament, I can't see a route to the Tories remaining in power. It's going to be a lib-lab deal of some description with the SNP. The thing that really sort of haunts Labour, obviously, Labour history is littered with nearly men. Poll leads have gone away. 2015, David Cameron didn't look like he was going to get that majority, which he then did. The pollsters are slightly haunted by that, I think, a little bit. But then we've got 2017, when Theresa May went in looking like that red line that Starmer has, and actually, by the end of it, it started to go down. Do you think, what would it take for the Tories to be in that sort of hung parliament? And do you think it's possible? Are you seeing any sense, that this could happen? Because at the moment it looks completely rigid.
Yeah, I mean, not really. I think a hung parliament is absolutely the best case scenario as far as I'm concerned for the Conservative Party, and it still feels a real long way away. I think they need a miracle frankly. And I think that miracle would have to include some sort of Labour implosion, a la Theresa May in 2017. I think that May was incredibly bold with a policy that backfired on her in 2017. I don't think Keir Starmer is going to do that, and therefore playing it safe is absolutely the best strategy.
This has worked, though. This does work. The Aussie Labour Party did this, 18 months ago in their election. Create the smallest target possible. So that sort of Tory attack machine that is, so good at duffing up Labour leaders from Kinnock to Foot to Jeremy Corbyn was easy. That was just like shooting fish around, didn't he? But look what they did to Miliband. In a way, he put lots of big ideas out there, and they absolutely savaged them. Is it, are you expecting a sort of safety first, policy like
Yeah,
campaign?
I think so. But also what we have to remember, especially with some of those races that you've discussed, is this is Starmer versus Sunak. And I think that even in the public's mind, and they are still ambivalent towards Keir Starmer, they just dislike Rishi Sunak. And therefore, if you are going to make this campaign a little bit presidential, which the Conservative Party have done, if you're pitching Cameron versus Miliband, there felt like there was only one winner. Even to May versus Corbyn or Johnson versus Corbyn, there was only one winner. This feels like there's only one winner, but it's the Labour man this time. It's not the Conservative politician anymore.
Kate, how long before you think that people will start to cluck in CCHQ and start to panic if that poll lead doesn't move?
Well, I think that they'll. When are we expecting manifesto? I think it's probably not next week.
No, Labour's perhaps the back end of this week, perhaps.
Okay, and maybe Tories next week.
Later,
yeah, I mean, look, once you have those manifesto launches, that's when probably the public starts engaging more, and they will want to be feeling like they're closing the gap. They are being quite bold and being quite ambitious with these policies, because funnily enough, like the government are having to be the plucky underdog to try and attract the attention. They're going to want some of that to sink in pretty soon.
Sunak has fought a campaign as the underdog before, and it didn't go very well for him against Liz Truss. And as that campaign went on and on, yes, he stuck to his sort of, his big message of tax cuts are wrong at this time, but he did start to throw out some pretty wacky policies, Ryan, that he then very much ditched. What do you think he's got up his sleeve? Obviously, pensioners today. When I read your splash this morning, it felt to me like surely we're going to see an inheritance tax cut as the big reveal.
I thought the big hint at the weekend was Jeremy Hunt saying that inheritance tax could be a priority for the party. Now, he didn't actually say when that would kick in, whether it be part of the manifesto, but you could actually see that. And also, then you need an offering to the under 40s, whether that's stamp duty or anyone trying to get on the property ladder. They need to go. They talk about the grey vote. They can talk about the grey vote all day long, but they do actually need to target people from the age of 18 to 40.
Right. So, Chris, thank you. Stick around. Next, we have our heroes and villains. So, 5 days in, who's been your baddies so far and who's been your shining stars? Who wants to go first? You all look quite nervous. Each campaign brings out the best and the worst of people. Who's been your baddie, Kate?
Okay, all right. So I'll pick. I wouldn't say he's my baddie because just a spectator. But I think the Tories' baddie will be Zach Goldsmith.
He hasn't exactly kept quiet, saying that Rishi Sunak will be screeching down the tarmac on about July the 6th on his way to California.
Exactly. So my view is Zach Goldsmith is this man that once upon a time was an MP, Tory MP, obviously quite close to Boris, and he sent this tweet saying that Rishi Sunak has sort of single-handedly wrecked the Tory party and they're going to have a disastrous general election and kind of no one's going to be there to rebuild, hopefully someone. And then he says, Rishi will be straight off in a private jet to California. Anyway, I can imagine that's quite annoying for CCHQ.
Given it was literally the first question that the PM was asked in his broadcast round yesterday. Imagine that. Ryan, Lucy Allen, hero or villain, depends which way you're looking at it.
Yeah, I think if you're a Tory strategist, you'd be looking at Lucy Allen's comments over the past 24 hours and saying she definitely is villain of the day. She's been, MP for Telford, been there for over a decade, and the moment she sort of steps down, she goes and backs the Reform candidate.
The Tory party very quick to expel her. She's already standing down is the key bit. Another one of those people, I think, there's a few of them around, Natalie Elphicke being a very obvious example. They don't like Rishi Sunak. It's not necessarily even about his policies. It's about how he's run the country for the last 2 years, and on a sort of personality level, quite cliquey, not much room for redemption for a sort of generation of politicians who I think probably thought they deserved ministerial office. And if you were going to kick the guy in the nuts on the way out,
why not?
Easiest way to do it.
Exactly. They should have they think that Rishi Sunak should attack further to reform over the past 18 months or so, and he simply hasn't done it. So this is the first opportunity they get. Barely Parliament's been prorogued, and they're sticking the knife in.
But you got that sort of Boris gang. Zach Goldsmith's obviously a key part of it. I think Lucy Allen was a sort of diehard Boris towards the end. How long do you think that? Well, it's clear that some of them can't keep them quiet. Do we think the sort of screw Rishi brigade, the Boris lovers, are they going to be able to keep their mouths shut for 6 weeks, or are we going to see more of this?
It's going to be really difficult. And even you look at someone like Steve Baker, who is a minister.
He's a hero.
You've skipped a lot there, Ryan.
So Steve Baker, go on.
So he could well be hero or villain of the day. He was extremely annoyed that he wasn't consulted on the national service policy.
And then it turns out he's in Greece. He's on his holiday.
Yeah.
To be fair though, Kate, Rishi Sunak did say your holidays are safe.
You
can all go on holiday.
Exactly.
So I think he was talking about the summer holidays, right? As in the kids' holidays in July. So it was a slightly sneaky way of doing it. Hero or villain, just saying, sod it, you know what?
Well, I think we can all relate to Steve Baker, right? I mean, although we had to cancel our holidays, Steve, so what the hell? I mean, am I allowed to do this show from the beach?
I don't think that's going to work.
So. But he was like loudly telling basically everybody on the last few days of term, I'm keeping my holiday plans. I'm really not. And he's like gone on record saying why. So he's pretty unashamed about it.
Chris, any standout heroes so far?
I mean, on the Steve Baker thing, I think so far, yeah. I mean, a villain for me would be anyone that is kind of bigging up a polling error. I think there is this kind of, again, assumption at the minute that the polls might be wrong because of the size of the lead, rather than this just being the state of play. And I think that anyone that's getting column inches for talking about potential polling error before it's happened is absolutely in my villain books. But yeah, the Steve Baker thing is even more strange because it's a marginal, I think. Whoever
he's got a big Muslim population in that seat as well. He's got a popular former Labour MP, Emma Reynolds, standing against him. Is he given up, do you think?
I mean, it feels that way, and as Kate said, we've had to cancel our holidays, so I feel like Steve Baker should be doing it.
It's the only constituency as well where they still weigh the MP. Did you know this? They at the end of every year, he has to stand in the town square, and they put the MP on the scales. It goes back hundreds of years, and basically, if he increased his weight, they consider him to have got lazy and slack in Westminster. And
if I was in Greece, I'd be coming back worrying about that.
So when he's coming back full of kebabs,
exactly.
I have a villain.
I mean, why are you looking at me like that?
No, I'm just saying, I have a villain. My villain is Keir Starmer of the day. Declaring himself a proud socialist. Do you believe that? The socialists in the Labour Party don't think he's a socialist. He's doing everything he possibly can to try and not be, distance himself from Jeremy Corbyn, and there he is singing the red flag.
I think the point of Keir Starmer, right, is that he's not singing the red flag, is he?
Well, then why say it? Say, no, I'm not a socialist. Say I'm a progressive. Why sort of hark back to an ideology that, it's a bit of a slippery slope, isn't it?
I think there's two things, right? Like, you can't say, you cannot, as Labour leader, say in the general election, I'm not a socialist. It would just be anathema to your base and to most of your supporters. The definition of socialist has certainly moved, I think.
Very convenient. Very convenient.
And I noticed that Johnny Reynolds also today described himself as a Christian socialist, probably to tone down the scariness of that word.
Chris, is it a scary word still?
I don't think so, and especially as Kate said, for Starmer's base, I think he has to. Labour is a broad church, as we're repeatedly
very broad
told.
Church. The party that doesn't have Jeremy Corbyn in and does have Nafi Elfie.
But yeah, I don't think it's going to matter hugely. I don't think it's going to put anyone off that hasn't already made their mind up.
You'll have to Daily Telegraph. Sorry to always talk about the Daily Telegraph on this show, but we have the colonels in the shires will be sputtering into their cornflakes.
Yeah, I don't think that's Keir Starmer's natural vote winning strategy, is it? So yeah, I mean, I think he's trying to placate both sides, and I think there is still a hope among Labour voters, perhaps all those very engaged, that what they see and hear from Keir Starmer in this election campaign will be very, very different if he gets to number 10. Nearly said when, which is a bit of a Freudian slip. But I think given the lead that they've got in the polls, it is very expected. I think that this election campaign could be incredibly boring, and it feels a bit like a foregone conclusion already. So we're really looking for one of the major parties to do something, almost like poking them to do something at this point to make this a little bit more entertaining.
Ryan, did your eye twitch when you read, will some readers be coughing into their cornflakes in the same way as some others about the word socialist?
Possibly. I think it seemed like a sort of dirtier word maybe sort of 10, 15 years ago. I don't think so.
5 years ago.
5 years ago, yeah.
With the bearded one on the march.
You just wonder whether he has faced a little bit of criticism over recent days about junking all those policies that got him to actually be leader. So you just wonder whether he needs to go back and actually...
Is he feeling the heat from the left?
From the left. I think he just needs to shore up that support a little bit.
What do you think happens with Diane Abbott? We get a verdict imminently. She's apparently completed her online anti-Semitism training. Are they going to kick her out?
I can... Here we go. It's probably going to be announced in a few hours. But yeah, you can see, you wonder whether it's right now for her to actually stand down from frontline politics. She's been there a long, long time. You just wonder whether it's time to call it a day.
Right. Mixed bag on heroes and villains and the word socialist, but I'm going to keep my views to myself, I think. Right. Finally, the moment of the day. So on Sunday, there was a very strange moment when, there was all this sort of row that Rishi Sunak had taken Saturday off because he'd, seen his kids and done some meetings at home. But then he turned up leafleting and so. And then on Sunday, Keir Starmer was just gone. And then at about 4 o'clock, the 61-year-old Labour leader was accused of being Sir Sleepy by the Tories. He was then asked about this, and I think this is quite a moment because I didn't think the gloves were going to come off on Keir Starmer's age. He's not exactly Joe Biden or indeed Donald Trump, but he is 20 years older than Sunak. So here's what he had to say.
I've had a smile on my face since the 1st of January 2024 because I knew this was going to be election year. I've wasted 9 years of my life in opposition. I've worked 4.5 years to change this Labour Party, and now I've got the chance to take that to the country. So we're doing that not only with energy, but with a smile, with the positivity across all of our candidates as we go into this election.
It was noticeable the PM did not repeat the claims made by, I think we described him, a senior Conservative source. But they doubled down on it yesterday. They were still sort of pushing Sir Sleepy. They managed to get it on the front of the FT. So this isn't exactly, this isn't just the sort of thing, the sort of tack that's sort of lurking in a darker recess of the internet. Kate, do you think it's going to work?
Well, I don't know if it'll work, but I think we're going to see more of it.
It's quite fun, at least, right?
They quite like the Sir Sleepy thing. They think it plays well. They think there's something there to play with. And obviously, Keir having to be like a little bit cringe. I've got energy, I'm fired up in response. Can I just quickly tell you what this reminds me of, which I don't know if you guys will remember, but back when Jeremy Corbyn, that guy, used to be Labour leader.
He used to have naps, though.
There was a massive story about how he'd take Fridays off because he had naps. And then his team had to brief that he was pumped up and ran every morning. Remember?
Yes.
And they kept briefing that he was in Finsbury Park outdoor gym. Anyway, it reminded me of that. I'm not sure how much cut through that ever had.
Ryan, he is 61. Obviously, he bangs on about playing football once a week, or tries to play football once a week. He's.
Hold up.
Do you think is age an issue? Is age on the ballots paper?
I think what the Conservatives are trying to do is try and create that gap. They actually tried it not that long ago with Prime Minister's questions. I don't know if you remember. But I think, I'm not quite sure it hits home. He's not like an old 61, 62-year-old. He does come across as quite sprightly. He goes, plays football. We saw pictures of him going to the gym. And
talking of football, did you see this yesterday? I absolutely adored this. Rishi Sunak, literally, let's just watch. Giving a new term to the phrase dribbling. I think if you are going to suggest, dare I say, that your opponent might not be physically up to it, is it a good idea to look like the kid on sports day who's forgotten his kit and had to play in his uniform?
The problem there is always playing football in your work shoes. Never do it. Always put some trainers on.
There's a great video of Tony Blair kicking a ball and absolutely missing it, but in true form just sort of laughed it off. There's loads of pictures of Boris, just being a complete clown, knocking over children, playing cricket. Chris, would you be advising campaigns to go anywhere near a football?
Yeah, I mean, why not? It's a bit of fun, and I didn't think Rishi Sunak's skills were as bad. I
can't talk.
It's been a long time since I've played, so I don't know if I'd be much better, particularly in proper shoes. But But yeah, I think I do wonder if the Tories stuck to this sort of stir sleepy line, whether that is the sort of thing that would cut through. I think what we're seeing at the minute, though, is just a mixed message. I think we're seeing some Tory strategists sort of peddling it and others sort of distancing themselves from it. And I think that just speaks to a lot of mixed messaging coming from CCHQ at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, remember
isn't gonna
2015, it was David Cameron, George Osborne, long-term economic plan, long-term economic plan, long-term economic plan, to the point that actually people in studios like this were sitting around criticising, saying the election's boring. But you've got to hammer the same point over and over again for it to get through.
I don't think we're getting that level of message discipline, but we are actually from the Labour Party. It's all about change. And we're seeing that change is a far more powerful message than the plan is working at the moment. So, that does make us think that, maybe this election is going to be quite boring and maybe is a foregone conclusion.
It's not going to be boring. It's not a foregone conclusion. And you will be able to join us and work that out every single day on Never Mind the Ballots. Kate, Ryan, Chris, thank you so much. Come back and see us soon. Guys, get out there on the road. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for watching.